She's been a fan favorite for nearly 30 years, yet we still don't know her real name. Ada Wong is Resident Evil's ultimate enigma, a spy who betrays every employer she's ever had, only to save the one man she should have killed. From her death in Raccoon City to the shadows she cast over 2023's Separate Ways and beyond, we're diving into every appearance to finally answer, who is the woman in the red dress? Please subscribe. Now let's begin. Part 1. The Mystery of Linda. The genesis of the woman the world knows as Ada Wong is a tale of shifting identities that begins not in the fiction of Raccoon City, but in the frantic development rooms of Capcom during the late 90s. To truly understand her origin, one must look back at the legendary discarded version of Resident Evil 2, colloquially known by the fan base as Resident Evil 1.5. In this proto-version of the sequel, the character of the mysterious spy did not yet exist in her iconic red dress. Instead, players were introduced to a woman named Linda. Unlike the freelance mercenary we know today, Linda was explicitly designed as an Umbrella Corporation researcher. Her character model featured a sterile, professional white lab coat, signaling her status as a high-ranking scientist within the very company responsible for the viral outbreak. In this early draft of the story, Linda was intended to be a sympathetic figure, a researcher who had seen the horrors her employer had unleashed and sought to assist the protagonists, Leon S. Kennedy and Elza Walker, as they navigated the collapsing infrastructure of the Raccoon City Police Department and the subterranean labs beneath the city. The transition from Linda to Ada Wong was not merely a change of clothing, but a fundamental narrative pivot that redefined the trajectory of the entire franchise. As the development of Resident Evil 1.5 was scrapped and the game was rebuilt from the ground up, the writers realized they needed a character who could serve a dual purpose, providing a sense of mystery while simultaneously bridging the lore back to the original Arklay Mansion incident. By choosing the name Ada, the developers were able to create a brilliant retroactive connection to a single, easily overlooked file found in the first game. This transformed the character from a simple corporate defector into a legendary enigma. The name change allowed the writers to strip away her concrete history as a scientist and replace it with a void of information. This established the defining characteristic of her persona, the idea that Ada Wong is a person defined not by her past, but by her absolute utility to the moving pieces of a global conspiracy. When we analyze the transition from the white-coated Linda to the red-dressed Ada, we see the birth of the femme fatale archetype within the survival horror genre. Linda was a victim of circumstances, a woman bound by her employment and her proximity to the disaster. Ada, conversely, was an intruder. She was the one player in the Raccoon City drama who was there by choice, moving with a cold, calculated grace that suggested she was always 3 steps ahead of the biological horrors surrounding her. By abandoning the Linda concept, Capcom created a character who could exist outside the traditional hero-villain binary. She became a living ghost in the machine of the Umbrella Corporation, a figure whose presence suggested that there was a world of espionage and high-stakes power plays happening just out of sight of the player's flashlight. This mystery is what allowed the character to endure for decades. If she had remained Linda the researcher, her story would have likely ended with the destruction of Raccoon City. By becoming Ada the spy, she became immortal, a recurring variable in a global equation of bioterrorism that is still being solved in the year 2026. Part 2, The Letter from John. While the physical debut of Ada Wong occurred in the burning streets of Raccoon City, her spiritual introduction was a subtle, haunting piece of environmental storytelling found in the original 1996 Resident Evil. Within the depths of the Arklay Laboratory, beneath the Spencer Mansion, players discovered a document titled Researcher's Will, written by a man named John Clemens. John was the head researcher of the facility, a brilliant mind who had been tasked with the unthinkable, the refinement of the T-virus. However, John was also a man possessed by a profound, tragic love for a woman he knew as Ada. This relationship was the ultimate evidence of Ada's prowess as a manipulator. Long before she was a household name, she had successfully infiltrated the highest levels of Umbrella's research wing by weaponizing the heart of its lead scientist. John was so utterly consumed by his devotion to her that he integrated her name into the very security fabric of the facility, using the login credentials John and ADA for the laboratory terminals. The tragedy of John Clemens is a cornerstone of Ada's lore because it highlights the cold, transactional nature of her early career. To John, Ada was a partner, a light in the darkness of his horrific work. To Ada, John was a password. He was a source of high-level security clearance and a vessel for information. In his final letter, written as his body was beginning to succumb to the viral infection, John begged Ada to take the evidence of Umbrella's crimes to the public. He wrote with the desperation of a man who believed his lover was an innocent woman caught in a corporate nightmare, pleading with her to survive and expose the truth. He died believing in a version of Ada Wong that never truly existed. It is one of the most chilling first mentions in gaming history. We meet our favorite spy, not as a person, but as the fantasy of a dying man. This off-screen history provided Ada with a layer of professional legitimacy that few other characters possessed. When she eventually arrived in Raccoon City, she wasn't just a mercenary with a gun. She was a woman who already held the keys to the kingdom because she had stolen them from a dead man's heart. The connection to John Clemens also allowed her to navigate Umbrella's internal systems with an ease that baffled her contemporaries. She knew the protocols, the personalities, and the secret back doors of the company because she had spent months, perhaps years, observing them through the eyes of a man who loved her. This letter from John serves as a permanent reminder of the high cost of Ada's friendship. She is a woman who enters lives like a virus, replicating the emotions her targets want to see until she has extracted everything of value. By the time the world learned her name, she had already left a trail of broken hearts and compromised laboratories in her wake, proving that the most dangerous weapon in the Arklay Mountains wasn't the tyrant, but the woman who knew the password to its cage. Part 3. Arrival in Raccoon City. On the night of September 29th, 1998, Raccoon City had become a literal hell on Earth. As the T-virus tore through the population, turning a vibrant Midwestern town into a mass grave of the walking dead, Ada Wong slipped into the chaos with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Her mission was singular and high stakes. She was there to retrieve a sample of the G-virus, the revolutionary and terrifying genetic breakthrough created by William Birkin. Unlike the terrified civilians or the overwhelmed police force, Ada viewed the apocalypse as an operational environment. To facilitate her movement through the restricted zones of the city, she adopted a meticulously crafted cover story, posing as an FBI agent. This choice of disguise was brilliant, as it provided her with a veneer of authority that would disarm anyone she encountered, specifically the idealistic and naive rookie officer, Leon S. Kennedy. The first encounter between Ada and Leon in the parking garage of the Raccoon City Police Department is one of the most significant moments in the entire franchise. It was here that the Lady in Red first utilized her greatest tactical asset, her ability to manipulate the hero's moral compass. She saw in Leon a man who was desperate for a sense of order and a mission to follow. By presenting herself as a government official on a classified investigation, she effectively turned the most capable survivor in the city into her personal bodyguard. Leon, driven by a deep-seated desire to do what was right, became the unwitting engine that drove Ada toward her objective. He cleared the rooms, fought the monsters, and took the risks, all while Ada maintained her professional distance, watching him with a mix of clinical interest and burgeoning, inconvenient empathy. This era of Ada's history is defined by the tension between her mission and the human variable represented by Leon. Throughout their descent into the sewers and eventually into the sterile white halls of the Nest laboratory, Ada was forced to maintain a delicate balance. She needed the G virus for her employers, a mysterious rival organization to Umbrella, but she also found herself increasingly entangled in Leon's survival. Their relationship was born in a slaughterhouse, a bond forged by fire and the shared trauma of witnessing the end of a world. While she continued to lie to him, using the FBI story to keep him compliant, her actions began to betray her cold exterior. She saved his life, even when it didn't benefit the mission, and she shared moments of vulnerability that suggested the mask of the spy was beginning to crack. Raccoon City was the forge where the modern Ada Wong was created. It was where she realized that even in a world of biological monsters and corporate greed, a simple rookie cop could be the one factor she could never fully calculate or control. Part 4. The First Death and Survival. The climax of the Raccoon City incident presented Ada Wong with her most significant challenge: surviving her own apparent death. In the original 1998 version of Resident Evil 2, the nature of Ada's demise was famously inconsistent, changing based on whether the player was experiencing the Leon A or Leon B scenario. In one version, she was fatally wounded by the mutated William Birkin. In another, she was thrown against a control console by the relentless tyrant, slumping into Leon's arms for a final, tragic goodbye. In the 2019 remake, the ambiguity was replaced with a cinematic fall into the abyss of the Nest facility's central core. For years, the question of how she survived a fatal injury, followed by a 100-foot drop into a pit of fire, was the greatest mystery in the series. It was a death that felt final, a poetic end to a spy who had finally been caught in her own web. However, the reality of her survival was far more technical and impressive than mere luck. Later installments, specifically the Umbrella Chronicles, revealed that Ada utilized a specialized grapple gun, frequently referred to as the hookshot, to break her fall. As she plummeted toward the core of the laboratory, she fired a high-tension cable that snagged onto a structural support beam, allowing her to swing into a lower, auxiliary ventilation shaft. While Leon was mourning her at the top of the shaft, Ada was already beginning the grueling process of dragging her broken body through the sub-levels of the facility. This survival was not just a feat of technology. It was a demonstration of her indomitable will. Even with a severe wound to her side, and the city's self-destruct sequence counting down, she refused to relinquish the G virus sample she had recovered from the tissue of William Birkin. This moment of survival transformed Ada from a supporting character into a legendary figure within the lore. It proved that she was a survivor on par with Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, albeit one who operated with much darker motives. Her resurrection from the depths of the Nest facility established a recurring theme in her story: the idea that Ada Wong is never truly gone. no matter how certain her death may seem. She is a character who thrives in the aftermath, picking herself up from the wreckage of the heroes' battles to claim the prize they left behind. When she finally made it to the surface of the city, she was no longer just a spy. She was a ghost who had walked out of a nuclear-grade inferno with the world's most dangerous biological weapon in her pocket. This escape defined her as the ultimate third party, the one who survives the end of the story to start a new one. Part 5. Death's Door. The specific window of time between Ada's fall in the nest and her final escape from Raccoon City is documented in the Death's Door scenario of Resident Evil: The Umbrella Chronicles. This chapter is essential lore because it depicts Ada at her most desperate and vulnerable, severely injured, bleeding out, and facing the literal end of the world. She had to navigate a city that was minutes away from being vaporized by a thermobaric missile. This wasn't the poised, flirtatious spy the fans were used to. This was a wounded animal fighting for every inch of ground. She had to conserve her remaining ammunition and use the environment to evade a surviving tyrant model that was patrolling the ruins of the city. Every step was a struggle against shock and blood loss, yet her mind remained focused on the singular goal of extraction. In her final moments on the ground, Ada realized that her original extraction plan was gone. Her only hope lay in a deal with the devil. She established contact with Albert Wesker, the former STARS captain who had faked his own death and was now overseeing the Raccoon City incident for a rival company. Wesker, ever the pragmatist, was not interested in Ada's life, but he was desperately interested in the G-virus sample she carried. In a high-stakes negotiation held over a flickering radio frequency, Ada traded the sample for a seat on a transport out of the zone. Wesker coordinated a last-second retrieval by a cargo helicopter, which lowered a specialized hook for her to latch onto just as the missile impact began. The Death's Door incident officially cemented Ada's role as Wesker's primary field operative, but it also established the foundation of their mutual hatred. Ada knew that Wesker would have left her to die without a second thought if she hadn't held the virus, and Wesker knew that Ada was a wild card who could never be fully trusted. This escape was the transition point between the Raccoon City era and the global espionage era. She left the city not as a hero, but as a mercenary who had seen the absolute bottom of the world and decided to keep climbing. The fact that she survived a nuclear explosion by hanging onto a helicopter hook while suffering from a fatal wound is the ultimate testament to the Lady in Red. She is a woman who refuses to be part of the collateral damage, a survivor who turns a catastrophe into a career move. Part 6. Working for the organization. After the smoke cleared from the ruins of Raccoon City, Ada Wong entered a decade-long period of shadow work that would define the global balance of biological power. While casual observers of the law often assume she was a loyal soldier for Albert Wesker, the truth is far more complex. Ada was a lead operative for a mysterious, multinational syndicate known as the Organization, or the Third Organization. This group was a rival to both the remnants of Umbrella and the various government agencies trying to contain the bio-outbreaks. Wesker was her handler, yes, but he was also her target. Ada was a double agent from the very beginning, working within Wesker's inner circle to monitor his growing god complex and ensure that his more extreme ambitions were kept in check by her true employers. Her work during this era involved a series of high-stakes acquisitions across the globe. She was the one sent to retrieve the T. Veronica virus, the various strains of the G virus, and the evolving Las Plagas parasites. Ada's role was to be the cleaner, the person who arrived after the primary outbreak to collect the data and samples that would be sold on the black market or used to develop countermeasures. This was the period where she refined her signature style: the grapple gun, the high-tech gadgets, and the tactical red outfits that allowed her to blend into a high society gala or a war-torn village with equal ease. She became a legend in the intelligence community, a woman whose name appeared in the margins of every major bio-incident of the early 2000s. The relationship with Wesker during this time was a high-speed game of mental chess. Wesker provided Ada with the resources, the transport, and the intel she needed to operate on a global scale, and in exchange, she provided him with samples. However, Ada was famous for filtering the information she gave him. She would often provide him with incomplete data or subordinate strains of a virus, keeping the true master samples for herself or the organization. This era of her life proved that Ada Wong was more than just a spy. She was a sovereign entity. She was playing a game that neither Wesker nor the US government fully understood. She viewed the biological weapons not as tools for world domination, but as assets to be managed. By the time 2004 arrived, she had positioned herself as the most powerful individual in the bioespionage world, a woman who held the genetic blueprints for the future of humanity in her hands. Part 7. The Mission to Spain. In the year 2004, the theatre of conflict shifted to a remote, mountainous region of rural Spain. Albert Wesker dispatched Ada Wong on what he considered to be her most important assignment to date: the retrieval of a dominant species, plaga sample, from a fanatical cult known as Los Iluminados. These parasites were a departure from the viral weapons of the past. They didn't turn people into mindless zombies, but into ganados, intelligent, coordinated soldiers who followed the orders of a hive mind leader. Wesker saw the plaga as the ultimate tool for human subjugation, and he trusted only Ada to navigate the cult's territory and extract the sample. However, Ada was also given a secret, more violent secondary objective: the assassination of Jack Krauser, a former US operative who had joined Wesker but was now considered a liability. The mission to Spain was a collision course with Ada's past. Shortly after arriving, she discovered that Leon S. Kennedy, now a highly trained government agent, was also in the village on a mission to rescue the president's daughter, Ashley Graham. For the first time since Raccoon City, Ada found herself operating in the same space as the only man who could make her hesitate. Throughout the mission, she had to play a triple game. She had to manipulate the cult leader, Osmond Sadler. She had to monitor and eventually eliminate Krauser. And she had to ensure Leon survived long enough to distract the primary forces of the village while she secured the sample. This mission highlighted Ada's incredible tactical flexibility. She moved through the village, the castle, and the island facility like a phantom, often appearing just in time to save Leon from a fatal encounter before vanishing back into the fog. She was the one who provided the key items, the intel, and the fire support that allowed Leon to succeed. Yet, her professional goal remained her priority. She saw the horror of the plaga firsthand and realized that if Wesker were to obtain the dominant strain, the world would effectively end. This realization set the stage for her ultimate act of defiance. The mission to Spain wasn't just about a parasite. It was about Ada Wong finally deciding which side of history she wanted to be on, even if it meant betraying the most dangerous man on the planet. Part 8. Separate Ways. The Shadow Protagonist. The Separate Ways Chronicle is perhaps the most important document in understanding Ada's true character. It reveals that while Leon S. Kennedy was the hero of the Spanish mission, He was entirely dependent on a shadow protagonist who was clearing his path from the periphery. Ada was the one who rang the village church bell during the initial siege, providing the miracle Leon needed to survive the horde. She was the one who sabotaged the cult's heavy weaponry, took out their key researchers, and provided Leon with the tactical maps of the island. She worked twice as hard as Leon, fighting her own battles against the mutated U3 and the elite cult guards, all while ensuring that the human variable stayed alive. The most poignant aspect of Separate Ways is the way it depicts Ada's internal conflict. In her mission logs, she speaks of Leon with a mix of frustration and admiration. She views his idealism as a weakness, yet she is clearly drawn to it, repeatedly putting her own life at risk to save his for no operational gain. When Wesker ordered her to kill Leon, she flatly refused, instead choosing to fight Jack Krauser herself to protect him. This was the moment where Ada Wong officially chose her own third path. She was no longer a tool for Wesker or a servant of the organization. She was a woman making her own moral choices in a world of monsters. The climax of the mission saw Ada successfully retrieve the dominant species Plaga sample after Leon defeated Sadler. In a move that defined her independence, she handed Leon the keys to a jet ski and pointed him towards safety, while she boarded a helicopter with the prize. However, the final Separate Ways cutscene reveals the ultimate betrayal. Ada did not send the dominant sample to Wesker. Instead, she sent him a subordinate sample, one that would be useless for his plans of global enslavement. She kept the real prize for herself, ensuring that she remained the most powerful player on the board. This act of sabotage proved that Ada was the true victor of the Spanish incident. She saved the hero, crippled the villain, and walked away with the ultimate weapon, all without ever breaking a sweat or losing her signature poise. Part 9. The Rocket Launcher Legacy. If there is one image that defines the relationship between Ada Wong and Leon S. Kennedy, it is the sight of a red rocket launcher being tossed through the air in the final moments of a crisis. This recurring legacy began in the burning ruins of the Raccoon City laboratory and reached its iconic peak on a crumbling industrial island in Spain. The rocket launcher is more than just a weapon. It is the physical manifestation of Ada's third path philosophy. She is the woman who provides the extra leverage that the hero needs to finish a job that would otherwise be impossible. She doesn't want the credit, and she doesn't want to stay for the celebration. She simply wants the threat neutralized so she can get back to her own mission. This trope has become a cornerstone of the Resident Evil franchise's identity. It represents the unique partnership between Ada and Leon, a bond that is never formalized and never quite romantic, but is built on a foundation of absolute tactical trust. Leon knows that when the monster is too big and the ammo is too low, Ada will appear in the shadows with the solution. Ada knows that Leon is the only person capable of pulling the trigger on the horrors she uncovers. The red rocket launcher is her signature, a calling card that says she was there. She saw what happened, and she made sure the right person won. Analyzing this recurring moment reveals much about Ada's psychology. She is a woman who deals in power, viral power, political power, and literal firepower. By giving the ultimate weapon to Leon, she is making a choice about who should hold the power of life and death in that moment. She trusts Leon's morality more than her own, and certainly more than her employer's. It is a gesture of profound respect hidden under a veneer of professional detachment. This legacy ensures that Ada Wong is never viewed as a traditional villain, even when she is stealing viruses. She is the lady in red who ensures the world keeps spinning, one well-timed rocket at a time. This recurring act of assistance is the only way she knows how to say, "I care," and it has cemented her status as the most beloved enigma in gaming history. Part 10. Mission to the Eastern Slav Republic. In the year 2011, Ada Wong's journey took her to the Eastern Slav Republic, a war-torn nation embroiled in a brutal civil war involving the use of biological weapons. This mission, depicted in the film Resident Evil Damnation, showed Ada at the height of her professional powers, infiltrating the highest levels of the government by posing as a BSAA, Bioterrorism's Security Assessment Alliance, investigator. She successfully manipulated the president, Svetlana Belikova, into revealing the country's secret plaga cultivation facilities. This was Ada in political spy mode, using her charm, her intellect, and her deep knowledge of bioorganic weapons to navigate a landscape of treachery and state-sponsored terror. The mission once again brought her face to face with Leon S. Kennedy, who had been sent in as a US government observer. Their interaction in the Eastern Slav Republic was a masterclass in professional flirtation and tactical synchronization. While they were technically on opposite sides of the investigation, they fell into their old rhythm of mutual protection and shared objectives. Ada used Leon's presence to create the distractions she needed to infiltrate the president's inner sanctum, while Leon relied on Ada's intel to uncover the truth about the liquors being used by the rebel forces. The climax of the mission revealed the true scale of Ada's ambition. Even when she was captured and nearly executed by the president, who turned out to be a formidable combatant herself, Ada remained entirely composed. She secured a sample of the refined plaga being developed in the Republic and made her escape just as the facility was being destroyed by government airstrikes. This mission was significant because it showed that Ada was no longer tied to the ghosts of Umbrella or the shadow of Wesker. She was a free agent playing in the arena of global geopolitics, stealing weapons from presidents and walking away with her secrets intact. The Eastern Slav Republic was just another stop on her journey, another score to be settled, and another moment where she proved that no matter the country or the conflict, the lady in red always gets what she came for. Part 11. The Simmons Obsession. The narrative of Ada Wong's later career is inextricably linked to one of the most disturbing psychological profiles in the series, Derek C. Simmons. As a high-ranking United States official and the supreme leader of the Family, a clandestine fraternity that has manipulated global events from the shadows for centuries, Simmons possessed nearly limitless power. However, all his influence could not secure the one thing he truly desired: the loyalty and affection of Ada Wong. Their history began years before the global C virus outbreak, during a period when Ada was briefly employed by Simmons as an intelligence gatherer. Simmons, a man who viewed the world as a rigid system to be ordered and controlled, saw in Ada the perfect companion, a woman of peerless intellect, beauty, and lethal efficiency. He became convinced that she was his only equal, the only person capable of understanding the burden of ruling the world. However, Ada saw Simmons for exactly what he was, a megalomaniac whose obsession with stability was merely a mask for a god complex. When she discovered that Simmons had actively facilitated the destruction of Raccoon City to protect the secrets of the family, she severed all ties with him, rejecting his advances and his worldview with cold indifference. For a man who viewed himself as the architect of the modern world, this rejection was an intolerable wound to his ego. Simmons did not simply move on. He spiraled into a pathological fixation. He spent years tracking her, collecting data on her and attempting to find a way to possess her. This was not love in any human sense. It was a desire for ownership. He viewed Ada as a rare asset that had been misplaced, and his inability to reclaim her drove him to commit the most horrific biological crime in the history of the franchise. The Simmons obsession is a critical lore element because it highlights the fundamental difference between Ada and the villains she encounters. While men like Simmons and Wesker seek to control reality, Ada is content to navigate it. Simmons' obsession eventually led him to the realization that since he could not control the real Ada Wong, he would have to build a version that was loyal to him. He utilized his vast resources and the burgeoning C-virus research to initiate Project Ada, a series of experiments designed to force a human host to undergo a complete genetic and physical metamorphosis into a perfect doppelganger. This obsession would eventually trigger a global catastrophe, proving that the most dangerous element in a world of bioweapons is not the virus itself, but the fractured mind of a man who cannot accept the word no. Part 12. The birth of Carla Radames. The tragic victim of Simmons' obsession was a brilliant young researcher named Carla Radames. Carla was a child prodigy, a scientific genius who had discovered the C virus and refined it into a stable, revolutionary tool for genetic manipulation. She worshipped Simmons, viewing him as a mentor and a visionary. However, to Simmons, Carla was nothing more than a high-quality biological substrate. After thousands of failed attempts to recreate Ada Wong using other subjects, Simmons discovered that Carla's genetic makeup was the only one compatible with the Project Ada metamorphosis. In an act of ultimate betrayal, Simmons tricked Carla into becoming the final test subject. He infected her with the very virus she had created, forcing her body to melt and reform into the physical image of Ada Wong. The birth of Carla Radames, as the other Ada, is one of the most gothic and disturbing transformations in the Resident Evil series. While Carla's body became a perfect replica of Ada, down to her voice, her fingerprints, and her facial structure, her psyche was shattered by the trauma of the transformation. Simmons then subjected her to intense brainwashing, trying to write Ada's personality over Carla's memories. For a time, it worked. Carla operated as Simmons' loyal shadow, believing herself to be the real Ada Wong. But the core of Carla Radames could not be entirely erased. Deep within the subconscious of the clone, a burning, absolute hatred for Simmons began to grow. She realized that she was a counterfeit, a doll created by a man who didn't even know her real name. This split identity led to the creation of Neo Umbrella. Carla, masquerading as Ada, began to orchestrate a global bioterrorism campaign designed to bring about the very chaos that Simmons feared most. She wanted to destroy the world he tried to protect, and she wanted to do it while wearing the face of the woman he loved. This created a massive lore confusion for the characters in the world, as the actions of the evil Ada, Carla, were attributed to the real Ada Wong. Carla's existence is a dark mirror to Ada's own life. While the real Ada is a woman of absolute autonomy, Carla was a woman who had her very identity stolen from her. The tragedy of Carla Radames serves as a warning about the dehumanizing nature of the bioweapons industry. It is a world where even your own face can be weaponized against you. Part 13. The Real Ada versus Neo Umbrella. In 2013, as the world began to fall apart under the weight of the C virus outbreaks in Edonia, Lanxiang, and Tall Oaks, the real Ada Wong was drawn out of the shadows. She discovered that someone was using her face and her reputation to commit acts of global genocide, and for the first time in her career, the mission was personal. Ada had to navigate a landscape of total war, moving through the chaos created by Carla's Neo umbrella to find the source of the impersonation. This was a unique narrative position for Ada. She was no longer the mysterious intruder, but the victim of a global frame-up. She had to clear her name while simultaneously dismantling a conspiracy that she had inadvertently inspired. Her journey led her to the heart of the China outbreak, where she witnessed the horrific scale of Carla's revenge. Ada saw the Javo, mutated soldiers created by the C virus, and realized that Carla had taken her research and turned it into a nightmare. During this mission, Ada's path once again crossed with Leon S. Kennedy. Their Raccoon City reunion in the middle of a collapsing Chinese metropolis was fraught with tension, as Leon was initially unsure if he was looking at the woman he cared for or the terrorist responsible for the deaths of thousands. This confrontation was a testament to the strength of their bond. Despite the evidence of his own eyes, Leon chose to trust the real Ada, allowing her to go after the doppelganger while he focused on stopping Simmons. Ada's campaign against Neo Umbrella showcased her at her most lethal and determined. She wasn't just stealing a sample this time, she was erasing a legacy. She navigated the high-tech research facilities and the aircraft carriers of Neo Umbrella with a cold, surgical precision, destroying the data and the viral samples that Simmons and Carla had created. This era showed a more protective side of Ada. She realized that her presence in the world of espionage had created a ripple effect that was now drowning the innocent, and she took it upon herself to be the one to stop the flood. In the battle of the real Ada versus the fake, the stakes were nothing less than the truth itself. Part 14. Confronting the Doppelganger. The final confrontation between the real Ada Wong and Carla Radames took place on a massive Neo Umbrella aircraft carrier in the waters off China. It was a meeting of two versions of the same woman, one who represented autonomy and mystery, and another who represented trauma and revenge. Carla, by this point, had completely lost her grip on reality. She believed she had transcended both Ada and Simmons, becoming a god of the new world. When Ada finally cornered her, she didn't see a rival spy. She saw a broken woman who was a victim of a system they both inhabited. Ada's demeanor during this confrontation was unusually solemn, reflecting a rare moment of pity for the creature Simmons had created. The tragedy reached its peak when Carla, fatally wounded, injected herself with an extreme dose of the C virus. Her body underwent a final, horrific mutation, expanding into a massive fungal-like growth that attempted to consume the entire ship. This Carla Ada was a wall of screaming faces and melting flesh, a physical manifestation of the psychic pain Carla had endured. Ada was forced to fight this monstrosity, literally destroying the warped image of herself to survive. By killing the mutated Carla, Ada was not just defending herself, she was performing an act of mercy, ending the suffering of a woman whose only crime was being compatible with another man's obsession. After the destruction of the doppelganger, Ada proceeded to Simmons' private laboratory. In a final, symbolic act, she systematically smashed every piece of equipment and incinerated every file related to Project Ada. She left a message for the dying Simmons, letting him know that his attempt to recreate her had failed utterly. This was the moment Ada Wong reclaimed her identity. She proved that she was an entity that could not be replicated, a soul that could not be bottled in a lab. The clone conspiracy ended in fire and glass, leaving the real Ada as the only version remaining. She walked away from the burning ship, once again a ghost in the machine, but with the satisfaction of knowing that the woman Derek Simmons tried to build was finally, truly dead. Part 15. The Remake Shift. A New Personality. With the release of the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 remakes, the character of Ada Wong underwent a subtle but profound reimagining. While the original games often leaned into her femme fatale archetype, complete with flirtatious dialogue and a mysterious, almost playful demeanor, the modern remake versions depict a more weary, professional, and grounded operative. This remake shift presents an Ada who is less interested in being a cinematic spy and more concerned with the reality of her survival and the ethics of her work. Her voice is lower, her expressions are more guarded, and her interactions with Leon S. Kennedy are stripped of much of their melodrama, replaced with a gritty, transactional realism. In the 2019 Resident Evil 2 remake, her FBI cover story is played with much more weight. She isn't just a lady in a dress. She wears a tan trench coat and acts with a clinical coldness that makes her feel like a true government agent. Her interactions with Robert Kendo in the gun shop are particularly telling. She shows a flick of genuine compassion for the man and his daughter, but she immediately suppresses it to maintain her mission focus. This version of Ada is humanized, not through romance, but through her obvious exhaustion with the world of bio-warfare. She speaks of keeping score and cleaning up messes, suggesting that she views her life as a series of necessary evils rather than an exciting adventure. In the 2023 Resident Evil 4 remake, this evolution continues. She is depicted as a woman who is deeply skeptical of her employers, including Albert Wesker. Her relationship with Leon is redefined as a shared history of trauma. They aren't just flirting, they are two people who have been permanently broken by the same events. This new personality makes Ada a much more relatable and complex character. She is a professional who is good at her job, but is starting to see the cracks in the world she helps build. The remake Ada is a woman of fewer words, but more significant actions. A character who feels like a real person trapped in an unreal world. This shift has divided some fans who miss the classic spy, but it has added a layer of depth to the lore that makes her eventual choices in the story feel much more earned. Part 16. The Amber Secret. The Resident Evil 4 remake introduced a significant new piece of lore that fundamentally changed Ada's motivations during the Spanish mission, the Amber. In the original game, Ada was simply looking for a plaga sample. In the remake, her objective is a specific, ancient, and highly concentrated specimen of the parasite encased in amber. This amber is more than just a genetic sample. It is the source code for the entire plaga species, possessing a level of biological purity that makes it infinitely more dangerous than the samples Leon encounters. Throughout the Separate Ways DLC, Ada's primary goal is to retrieve this amber from the research labs of the island. The discovery of the amber's true potential is what triggers Ada's final character arc in the remake. As she observes the absolute devastation the plaga has wrought on the village and the island, and as she sees the horrific mutations it causes in people like Luis Serra and Jack Krauser, she begins to weigh the value of the amber against the cost of its use. She realizes that Albert Wesker doesn't just want to study the parasite. He wants to use the amber to initiate a global cleansing. For the first time, the professional Ada is confronted with a moral choice that she cannot ignore. The amber represents the ultimate power, and she realizes that no one Not even her employers can be trusted with it. This leads to the remake's altered ending. Instead of simply handing over the sample and flying away, Ada has a tense radio confrontation with Wesker. She sees the madness in his eyes and the scale of his ambition. At the final moment, after she has been extracted by her helicopter, she makes a split-second decision. She orders the pilot to change course, effectively stealing the amber from Wesker and going rogue. This amber secret adds a layer of heroism to her character that was more ambiguous in the original. She isn't just a thief. She is a warden. She realizes that some secrets are too dangerous to be sold, and she chooses to become the guardian of the amber to ensure that the world doesn't burn in Wesker's fire. Part 17, The Abandoned Village. One of the most intriguing what-if scenarios in Resident Evil lore involves Ada Wong's planned but ultimately cut role in Resident Evil Village, the 8th main installment. Official concept art revealed after the game's release showed a version of Ada Wong intended to appear in the snowy European mountains. In this version, she was depicted wearing a high-collared, Victorian-inspired plague doctor outfit, complete with a long coat and a mask. Her role was to be a mysterious investigator who would cross paths with Ethan Winters, potentially assisting him while she pursued her own investigation into the origins of the Megamycete and Mother Miranda's work. According to the developers, Ada was cut from the final game because her presence threatened to overshadow Ethan's personal, intimate story about rescuing his daughter. The writers felt that if Ada Wong appeared, the player's focus would immediately shift to the larger, global conspiracy lore, distracting from the gothic, fairy tale horror of the village. While her removal was a loss for fans, her planned inclusion confirms that Ada is still very much active in the post-2013 timeline. She is still the world's premier bioespionage expert, and she was clearly tracking the mold long before Chris Redfield and the BSAA arrived. The Plague Doctor concept art is significant because it suggests that Ada has moved into a more investigative role. She is no longer just a mercenary for hire. She is someone who seeks out these bio-incidents at the source. It hints at a woman who is acting as a self-appointed monitor of the world's biological threats. Even though she didn't appear in the final version of Resident Evil Village, her shadow looms over the events. The fact that she was even considered for the game shows that Capcom still views her as a vital part of the modern era, a character who is always just around the corner, watching the heroes from the mist and making sure the Black God doesn't spread beyond the mountains. Part 18, Where is she now? Tracking Ada Wong's movements after the events of Resident Evil 6, 2013, and the Amber incident in the RE4 remake is an exercise in following a ghost. In the current modern timeline, Ada is a free agent. She has no known ties to Albert Wesker, who is deceased, Derek Simmons, deceased, or the organization. She has successfully erased her trail, living as a high-stakes freelancer who operates in the most dangerous corners of the globe. She is no longer a tool for corporate interests. She is a woman with her own private agenda, her own resources, and her own network of informants. She exists in the third path, a space where she is neither a government agent nor a bioterrorist. Clues about her current activities can be found in various supplemental materials and the final epilogues of the games. She is known to be monitoring the rise of new organizations like the Connections, the group behind Eveline and the Mold, and the growing corruption within the BSAA. It is likely that she is acting as a balance breaker, intervening in bio-incidents to ensure that no single group gains a monopoly on viral or parasitic technology. She is the ultimate check and balance in a world of biological extremes. Whether she is in a high society lounge in Paris or a jungle outpost in South America, she is always keeping score. The mystery of her current whereabouts is the core of her appeal. In 2026, Ada Wong is likely the most well-informed person on the planet regarding biological threats. She knows where the bodies are buried, which viruses are in development, and who is funding the next apocalypse. She remains a character of pure autonomy, a woman who has survived the end of the world multiple times and come out stronger on the other side. As long as there are bioweapons being developed in the dark, the Lady in Red will be there to steal them, destroy them, or sell them to the right person, ensuring that the world stays in a state of precarious, messy equilibrium. Part 19. Is Ada Wong even her real name? One of the most enduring debates among Resident Evil lore experts is whether Ada Wong is her actual birth name or simply her most successful alias. Throughout the series, there have been numerous hints that her identity is entirely fabricated. In official government records and BSAA dossiers, her real name field is almost always marked as unknown or redacted. In Resident Evil 2, she uses the name as part of her FBI cover, but the link to John Clemens suggests that she has been using the name since at least the mid-90s. However, for a woman who specializes in the erasure of data and the manipulation of truth, it is highly likely that Ada Wong is just another mask. This theory is supported by her behavior. She has no documented family, no birthplace, and no history prior to her involvement with the rival company to Umbrella. She speaks multiple languages fluently and can adapt to any culture with ease, suggesting a background in high-level international intelligence training. Some fans believe she may be of Chinese American or purely East Asian descent, but even this is an assumption based on her appearance and the name she chose. She is a woman who has completely detached herself from the concepts of nationality and heritage to become a living ghost. To her, a name is just a series of letters used to open a door or close a deal. If Ada Wong is an alias, it raises the question of who she was before she became the spy. Was she a victim of a bio-incident herself? Was she an orphan trained by a shadowy agency? The lack of an answer is what makes her character so compelling. By having no past, she is not burdened by the weight of legacy or revenge that drives characters like Chris Redfield or Leon Kennedy. She is a creature of the present, a woman who reinvented herself to survive in a world of monsters. Whether her real name is Linda or something else entirely, Ada Wong has become a symbol of power and mystery that is far more real than any birth certificate could ever be. Part 20. The Leon Connection. Love or leverage. The relationship between Ada Wong and Leon S. Kennedy is the emotional heart of the Resident Evil series. But after nearly 30 years of lore, the question remains, is it love or is it leverage? From Ada's perspective, the connection is her only documented weakness. She has repeatedly risked her life, betrayed her employers, and sabotaged her own missions to ensure Leon's survival. These are not the actions of a cold mercenary. In the quiet moments of the remakes and the Separate Ways logs, it is clear that she sees in Leon a version of humanity that she has long since lost. He represents the rookie cop idealism that the world of espionage has tried to burn out of her. However, Ada is also a master of using this connection as tactical leverage. She knows that Leon will always hesitate when he sees her, and she uses that window of time to make her move. She knows he will prioritize her life over a virus sample, and she has exploited that altruism to complete her objectives. This creates a fascinating psychological loop. She uses him because she knows he cares, and he cares because he knows that deep down, she isn't as cold as she pretends to be. It is a relationship built on a foundation of shared trauma and mutual survival. They are the only two people who have seen the full scope of the bioorganic nightmare and come out the other side. Ultimately, the Leon connection is likely a mixture of both love and leverage. It is a third-path relationship. They cannot be together in any traditional sense. Leon is a government agent bound by law, and Ada is a shadow operative who lives outside it. But they are inextricably linked by the rocket launcher legacy. They are two sides of the same coin. The hero who stands in the light, and the spy who ensures he doesn't get consumed by the darkness. To Ada, Leon is the only person who makes her feel like more than just a ghost. Whether she is saving him or using him, he is the anchor that keeps the lady in red tethered to her own humanity. Part 21. The Hookshot and Gadgets. If the red dress is the aesthetic signature of Ada Wong, then the grapple gun, or hookshot, is the mechanical manifestation of her character. In a franchise where most protagonists rely on heavy ballistics, green herbs, and physical brawn to survive, Ada's reliance on high-tech gadgets reflects her status as a surgical operative rather than a soldier. The hookshot first appeared as a critical plot device in the original Resident Evil 2, but it evolved over the decades into a sophisticated piece of equipment that allows her to navigate three-dimensional space with a fluidity that defies the laws of survival horror. This gadget is the primary reason she is often referred to as a ghost. It allows her to bypass locked doors, scale vertical architecture, and vanish into the rafters before an enemy, or Leon, can even register her presence. It represents her fundamental refusal to be pinned down, a physical tool that mirrors her psychological elusiveness. The evolution of Ada's spy tech throughout the years, from the 1998 incident to the 2023 remake, showcases the shift from primitive espionage to advanced biotechnical monitoring. Beyond the iconic grapple gun, Ada has utilized an array of sophisticated tools, including augmented reality contact lenses, hacking devices capable of bypassing government-grade firewalls, and specialized scanners that can detect viral signatures in real time. In Resident Evil 6 and the Resident Evil 4 remake, her gear allows her to read the environment, seeing the heat signatures of enemies or the chemical trails of parasites. While characters like Chris Redfield represent the hammer of the anti-bioterrorism world, Ada is the scalpel. Her equipment is designed for evasion and acquisition, highlighting the fact that she is not there to win a war, but to steal the blueprints of the enemy's weapons. The fashion of Ada Wong is itself a tactical choice that blends high-class espionage with lethal efficiency. Whether it is the classic cocktail dress of the 1990s, the tactical cheongsam of the 2000s, or the modern knitted sweaters and leather holsters of the 2020s, her attire is designed to project a specific image, the woman who doesn't belong. By wearing a red dress into a war zone, she is making a statement of absolute confidence. She is so skilled that she doesn't need camouflage. This spy tech aesthetic is a crucial part of her lore because it separates her from the military-industrial complex of the BSAA or the government. Her gadgets are often unique, bespoke pieces of technology provided by the organization, emphasizing that she is always operating on a higher technological tier than the people she is manipulating. Part 22. The non-canon appearances. To fully grasp the cultural impact and the archetype of Ada Wong, one must look at her appearances outside the main Resident Evil timeline. From her inclusion in the asymmetrical horror game Dead by Daylight, to her tactical cameos in Project X Zone, and the live-action and animated films. These non-canon versions provide a fascinating look at how Capcom and the broader industry view her essence. In every crossover, Ada is defined by two traits: her role as a survivor and her identity as a secret agent. In Dead by Daylight, for instance, her perks focus on self-preservation and the ability to gather information without being seen. Even in a realm governed by supernatural killers, Ada remains the one person who can look a monster in the eye, analyze its patterns, and slip away into the fog. In the live-action Resident Evil, Retribution, portrayed by Li Bingbing, the character's aesthetic was prioritized, bringing the Lady in Red to life in a way that emphasized her status as a global icon. While the film's plot deviated significantly from the games, it maintained her core dynamic with Leon Kennedy and her role as a high-level operative with her own agenda. Similarly, in the animated films like Damnation, her character is used as the sophisticated foil to Leon's gritty realism. These appearances reinforce the idea that Ada Wong is a fixed point in the multiverse. No matter the medium or the continuity, she is always the smartest person in the room, always dressed for a gala, and always carrying a secret that could change the world. These non-canon appearances also allow developers to experiment with her power level. In various fighting games or tactical RPGs, Ada is often depicted with a moveset that emphasizes agility, wire traps, and misdirection. This tells us that, in the eyes of the creators, Ada's greatest strength is not her aim with a pistol, but her ability to control the flow of an engagement. She is the master of the exit strategy. While the main games must keep her grounded for the sake of survival horror, the non-canon appearances allow her to lean into the super spy persona that fans have adored for nearly 30 years. She has become the gold standard for the female anti-hero in gaming, a character who doesn't need a canon timeline to be the most compelling person on the screen. Part 23. Every secret ending explained. The story of Ada Wong is often told in the epilogues, those brief post-credit scenes and hidden files that detail her life after the credits roll. Analyzing these endings reveals a woman who is perpetually in motion, never allowing the dust of one mission to settle before she is looking toward the next horizon. In the original Resident Evil 2, her epilogue file describes her as a woman who has discarded her past, moving into the shadows of the global underground. In Resident Evil 3, a hidden image shows her in a stylish coat looking over a city skyline, signifying that the destruction of Raccoon City was merely the beginning of her career. These endings don't offer closure. They offer a promise of continued mystery. In Resident Evil 4, her ending is a masterclass in professional betrayal. We see her in a helicopter, looking down at the exploding island while she holds the dominant Plaga sample. She ignores Wesker's frantic communications, choosing instead to look at a picture of Leon. This ending summarizes her entire philosophy. She gets the prize, she saves the guy, and she cuts the cord with the boss. In Resident Evil 6, her ending is even more definitive. After destroying the laboratory where Carla Radames was created, Ada receives a phone call about a new job. She smiles, adjusts her holster, and walks toward the camera. This indicates that despite the global trauma she has just witnessed, she remains a professional who views the world as an endless series of objectives. The amber ending of the Resident Evil 4 remake is perhaps the most significant in modern lore. For the first time, we see her explicitly reject the path of global destruction. By diverting her helicopter away from Wesker, she transitions from a mercenary to a rogue agent with a conscience. These endings collectively show a character arc of increasing independence. She started as a spy, following orders to get a password for John, and she ended as a woman who holds the fate of the world in her pocket and decides, on her own terms, to keep it safe. Each secret ending is a breadcrumb leading toward a version of Ada who is no longer a player in someone else's game, but the architect of her own third path. Part 24. The Third Path. Theory. Throughout the Resident Evil series, the world is generally divided into two warring factions: the heroes, the US government, BSAA, and the Winters family, and the villains, Umbrella, Wesker, and Neo Umbrella. However, Ada Wong represents a third path. This theory posits that Ada is neither a savior nor a destroyer, but a force of balance. She understands that if the government has absolute control over bioweapons, they will become tyrants. If the corporations have them, the world will become a laboratory. By stealing samples and selling them to various organizations, or keeping them for herself, Ada ensures that no single entity ever gains a total monopoly on the genetic future of the human race. This third path is a lonely and dangerous existence. It requires Ada to be the perpetual outsider, never truly trusted by Leon and always hunted by men like Wesker. Yet it is the only path that allows for true autonomy. In the Resident Evil 4 remake, this theory is given more weight, as she realizes that the Amber is too dangerous for anyone to hold. Her decision to go rogue is the ultimate expression of the third path. She is the person who prevents the end of the world by making sure the fire is spread out so thin that it can never become a conflagration. She is the self-appointed warden of the world's most dangerous secrets, a woman who knows that as long as she is the one holding the sample, it won't be used to start an apocalypse. This philosophy makes her the most modern character in the franchise. She doesn't believe in the black and white morality of Chris Redfield, nor does she share the nihilism of the villains. She is a pragmatist who understands that the world is messy, corrupt, and constantly evolving. By staying in the grey area, she remains the only variable that the gods of the series can't account for. The third path is the reason she is still alive in 2026, while almost every other major antagonist has fallen. She doesn't fight the system. She navigates the cracks within it, ensuring that while the heroes and villains play their loud, destructive games, the Lady in Red is the one who quietly decides when the board gets reset. Part 25. The Legacy of the Lady in Red. As we look toward the future of the franchise, whether in the rumored Resident Evil 9 or a potential Resident Evil 5 remake, the legacy of Ada Wong remains as vibrant as the color of her dress. She is the most popular female character in the series because she represents a specific kind of power, the power of the Enigma. In an age of over-explained lore and origin stories, Ada Wong remains a character whose mystery is her greatest asset. She is the proof that you don't need a tragic backstory or a heroic cause to be the most compelling person in the room. Her legacy is one of independence, competence, and a refusal to be defined by any man, whether it be Leon, Wesker, or Simmons. Her return in the modern era of Resident Evil is almost a certainty, given her unfinished business with the remnants of Wesker's legacy and the mounting corruption within global agencies. Fans speculate that her next appearance might see her in a mentor role, or perhaps finally forced into a situation where she can no longer hide in the shadows. However, the true strength of her character lies in the fact that she doesn't need to change to be relevant. She is the perpetual outsider, the woman who walks through the fire and comes out with her makeup intact. She has become the face of the spy thriller element of Resident Evil, providing a necessary contrast to the survival horror and military action of the other protagonists. Ultimately, the Lady in Red is a symbol of the human element in a world of biological machines. She is the variable that makes the story interesting. She is the love interest who never says, "I love you," the villain who saves the world, and the spy whose real name we may never know. As we look back on nearly 30 years of Resident Evil history, Ada Wong stands as the ultimate survivor. She has outlived Umbrella, outplayed Wesker, and outrun the law. She is the ghost in the red dress, the enigma with a hookshot, and the woman who will undoubtedly be there to toss the final rocket launcher when the world ends one last time.